So you can use 120 to 150 to shape and sand the lyre. 180 is really smoothing everything out. T40 is pretty much finishing for most of the woods that we're using. On woods like oak, 240 is probably fine. On the maple we can go to 360, 400, 600. Depends how far a polished finish you want to get on it. The finer you sand, the better your finish will be, more shiny. So it's very important that we just round over the edges slightly when we sand. So for example here, just so that when our hand brushes against it, it doesn't catch. So we're trying to make that, this bit here where your hand is going to, your arm will touch. We're going to round that a little bit more. You can simply take your knife. We're just going to take off that corner down just a touch. Once we've done that, we will then sand this. You can take to 150 or 120 grit, and we're going to sand away that edge. Yeah, these are things that are best not done with the electric sander. Again, it's down by feel. And of course, you can use the scraper. And the same with this end here. We're not trying to round this over too much, but enough for it to feel comfortable. We're just taking away any sharp edges that might be. What we're going to do now is to take our auto sander, and we're going to use 180 grit. This has already been sanded to 120. We're now going to go to this has already been sanded through to 150 already, so we're going to go around this with 180. And then once we've done that, we won't use the power tool, but we'll put some 180 sheets on here, and we'll do the sides. We do top, all the whole instruments, and then once it's done, then we're going to damp it. So with the instrument sanded, what we need to now, with the instrument sanded, what we do now is damp the whole instrument over with water. So we damp a sponge, so wring it out, so it's dry but wet to the touch. And we're just going to very lightly damp the whole instrument over. And this is kind of gives you an idea what the instrument will be like with a very thin coat of varnish or any finish. Pay attention to the end grain. Again, we're trying to raise the grain. So you might need to redamp. Make sure it's not too wet. Okay, we're just raising the grain. Now on this pale maple it won't look very different, but on some woods like on the cedar you will see a marked difference. Now end grains will probably go quite dark. The whole point of raising the grain is we're now going to sand it, let it dry for an hour or two, And then we'll sand it back using even finer grain. This is all necessary stuff that we need to do. Especially on the end grain, it often gets quite roughed up. Don't just saturate the water, don't saturate it too much. Any imperfections will be shown, so if there's any, like on here, I need to sand that down a little bit more. This is a good place to check things over before applying the finish. And to sand this edge a little bit more, I can see there's a little bit more sanding to do, but this is a good chance to check things out and see what needs to be done. Okay, so the instrument has been wet sanded. Just seeing something he's doing. Okay, so the instrument has been wet sanded, allowed to dry, and resanded up to 240 grit on this example with cedar. The maple sometimes gets sanded up to higher grit. I've also used wire wool on the end grains to polish the end grain. Okay, so varnishing. When we're using oil varnishes, we have a similar approach in a sense, whether we're using Danish oil, this is a linseed based Danish oil, or this is an oil, linseed oil based finish, or I've got Osmo, which is a natural oil varnish. This one keeps the colour, doesn't yellow so much as some of the others. So this is a nice, really good varnish, quite expensive for a small tin, but it lasts forever. The linseed based Danish oil is unusual. The standard Danish oil is quite thin and quite strong smelling. This Danish oil has no solvents, so I can use it in the workshop inside, no problem. The same protocol with any oils though, that you wipe it on, you dispose of the rags in water, or allow them to dry because they can self-combust. So that's the danger of using rags and oil finishes. But the advantage is that it's quite simple and it just takes some time. With the Osmo coats, we're going to apply one a coat every day for a couple of weeks. With the Danish oil, I'll probably do the same sort of techniques. The plain linseed, if you're using just boiled linseed oil, again, it's a coat every couple of days, depending on how long it takes to dry, really. If you're using pure linseed oil, it will take forever to dry, so avoid that if you can. This is polymerized linseed oil, which has been treated in a way, I think, with heat. Basically just rub it in. Rub it on, we'll leave it for an hour, and then we'll come back and wipe any excess off. And we'll repeat this at least once a day, allowing it to dry. It can dry, take longer to dry different parts of the year. The reason I'm using this varnish rather than just pure oil on because cedar is a little bit softer than maple. So I tend to use the pure linseed on the maple instruments. But this just gives you a little extra protection. There's some natural resins in this Osmo finish. basically it's wipe on, leave for a little while to sink in, and then we use a clean rag to wipe it off. And you just need to hang the lyre somewhere safe to dry overnight, somewhere it's not going to get damaged. And we hang them up on a hook on the ceiling. And subsequent quotes we'll probably use when we apply the subsequent quotes, we'll start to use wire wool for the further coats. And normally with lyres, I'm not going for a gloss finish, I'm going for like a matte or a soft satin sheen. This normally only takes a few weeks to do. To be fair, after even 1 or 2 coats, the instrument has enough to protect it from the moisture. You can stop at any stage, leave it for a few weeks, and then buff it up with some wax. A little bit of oil goes a long way with Osmo, or any of the oils really. The advantage you have is that you've got plenty of time to work it in to the wood, unlike with French polish where you have to work very quickly and rapidly and accurately. And the lovely thing about most of these oil finishes, they work lovely with these backs as a polish. And if you need to go over it again, if we've missed any areas, you just apply it with some wire wool. And it's very easy to refinish. Any time you need to, the instrument starts to look too dry, you can apply some more. Varnish is never completely done with oil finishes. But over time, even when they're handled, they can develop a nice patina.